Hello, everyone. Welcome to Grid Live Wrap-Up. Joe Sandiego here, along with Ben Schneider, Kobe Lambus from the Podium Finish, our Supercars expert Adam Lemeries, and Joshua Birch from Joshua Birch Motorsports. A big thank you and shout out to our Patreon subscribers calling the show Mark and Robin for keeping us on the air throughout the 2022 year. We greatly appreciate everything you've done for us. And of course, you too can invest in the Great Network by clicking the link onto Patreon or buy me a coffee, a one-time contribution. Buy coffee for your favorite on-air personality. Before we get started into the racing business, we want to acknowledge today is September 11th, a traumatic day for many 21 years ago, and still living with the grief of losing a loved one and the memories of such a horrendous day. A day many of us will never forget. Of course, it's been a day for everyone in the United Kingdom as well, as the Queen starting their final travel over to a country mourning. Joshua, of course, donning the black in memory of Queen Elizabeth. Kobe, today we saw a great race at Laguna Seca, and we saw a champion and something pretty historic considering Will Power is your champion, and he did it with just one win.
Yeah, and the 2022 NTT INDYCAR Series season has come to an end, and Will Power is the 2022 champion, becoming a two-time IndyCar champion with one win compared to Joseph Newgarden's 5 wins. A consistent effort all season long, 75% top 5 finish rate, 85% top 10 finish rate. He won his 68th career pole this weekend, putting him ahead of Mario Andretti for most poles all time and claiming the title greatest qualifier in IndyCar history. So definitely quite a historic weekend for Will Power. Starting with you, Ben, after taking home his second IndyCar title, what are your thoughts on Will Power's championship winning season?
Well, first of all, my thoughts are how did Will Power win the championship only winning one race when Joseph Newgarden won 5? This is 2003 NASCAR all over again, so I guess you can look forward to the chase for the IndyCar Series Cup coming in 2023. But in all seriousness, no, Will Power had a fantastic season. He did it on consistency as well. He may have only had one win, but you look at how many podiums and how many top 5s he had. He was just on there every single week, it seemed, and had the rare off weekend here or there. But that was the difference between him and Newgarden. Was Newgarden had a lot more weekends where he was down in the teens and not really competing up front for the win. And so even though Newgarden had a bigger winning season on paper, Will Power was still able to take the championship and to do so on a weekend where he breaks Mario Andretti's record as well for the most pole positions. Anytime you can break any one of Mario Andretti's records, I'd say you're doing something right. So for Will Power, it's so great to see this success that he's having now and to win a second championship as well. He very well could have won 3 championships in a row in 4 and 5 years early in his career. He kind of, had these late season collapses for 3 straight years from 2010 to 2012. Had to lose a few to win that one in 2014 and has continued to remain competitive ever since, but never quite broke through to win that second championship. Of course, he did win an Indianapolis 500, but it's been a great story for him. I know they were mentioning on the broadcast today how his career, was really at a crossroads and he wasn't even sure if he was going to have a ride in the IndyCar Series. And then the whole thing with Helio Castroneves' taxes happened, and Penske kind of needed to bring on a replacement driver for a little while. And I'd say that partnership has turned out to be quite an incredible success that nobody ever could have imagined when it first got started. But Will Power is certainly one of the legends of IndyCar racing, and for him to win a second championship today, totally deserved and a great season, and we'll see what he can do going into 2023.
Yeah, I completely agree with you as well, Ben, as well, because it was a fantastic season of consistency from him as well. I think it was really a season of also 2 halves as well, because the first half of the season we were all talking about, yes, it could be a Penske championship, but we're all talking about the fact it's either going to be Joseph Newgarden or that of Scott Mclaughlin as well. They won the opening 3 races of the year. Mclaughlin won race 1 and race 3, and then it was the middle one at Texas that got snatched away from Mclaughlin by Newgarden as well. And Power only won 1 race, but he won the Detroit race as well, which is absolutely a fantastic race. But he got the championship by being consistent as well. And I was very, very happy to see him get a second title, because if anybody deserves it, it is him. As you say as well, Ben, he should have been a multiple champion early on in his career. It didn't work out. And everyone was sort of saying as well, around about the time in the Indy 500, he's not really performing as well as he should be. Is there a risk he could lose his spot next year at Penske? I think he bounced back. He took all those comments on board as well, and he had an absolutely fantastic second half of the season as well, and began the consistency run, and then took the championship when Newgarden crashed out at Iowa, took the lead of it, and just ran away with it. And we never really were under any illusion that he would lose it, because Ericsson had the lead after the Indy 500 win, and we all knew that was only because of the double point situation. So it was a mighty good drive from Will Power, and he won it basically yesterday in qualifying. Everyone else, bad session for them. Newgarden getting sent out as well by crashing at the corkscrew and getting beached as well. So yeah, it was Power's to lose, and he kept his nerve, although there was a couple of points in the commentary when me, Megan and Josh thought he might just lose it if he starts dropping back, but he held his nerve and he got the job. So it was a good championship win for him.
Yeah, definitely a great championship run. And we have a comment in the chat room from Michael Tillerson at 9/11. Very tragic day for us, which I remember very well in a way. And may God rest her royal majesty, Queen Elizabeth II. So she was a wonderful queen. Thank you for mentioning them, Joe. Yeah, Michael, really appreciate your comment right there. And getting back to the championship, what a remarkable, consistent season for Will Power, and absolutely deserved champion. He was well overdue to get another IndyCar championship, and overall, I know it's really crazy looking at Power able to take only one race victory, but remarkable consistency. And then Joseph Newgarden, 5 wins, and it makes me wonder when looking at the final point standings, if Joseph Newgarden hadn't had that mechanical failure at Iowa, we might be talking about a different story right now. It could have came down, to what happened at Iowa when he was dominating, or any of the other races where something went wrong for that number 2 team. And at the end of the day, I think Newgarden should certainly hold his head high, because he had a remarkable season, and actually segments well into our next topic about Newgarden coming from 25th on the grid to second place after making a mistake in qualifying yesterday, which got his fastest lap times deleted. He led a few laps in the race, but there was nothing he could really do despite a really, really good day at Laguna Seca. He had one of his best seasons yet, 5 victories, the most for him in a single season. Josh, is Newgarden an early favorite next year? And is IndyCar just too unpredictable to have an early 2023 championship favorite?
Well, at this point last year as well, when you asked me a similar question, I think I said Colton Herta is the favourite to win this year's title. How wrong was I? With Colton having, I think, his worst year in the championship as well. I think we have to remember as well that these cars are going to stay largely the same going into next year as well. So there's a very good chance as well that Newgarden is going to keep up the strength and keep through as well what we've seen here. I do believe that Newgarden is going to, again, remain consistent, and I do think he's an early shot for the title, but there's so many coming on. We've got Will Power back up, having top form of racing again. Palou just won the last race of the season as well. I'm sure we'll get onto that later on as well. But he's now going to move over as well to a new team if the contract recognition board do say he's staying either at Chip Ganassi or he's going over to McLaren if McLaren's got a room for him as well. So it's all moving around so that we've got more predictability for next year. But my early pick for the championship next year would actually be Scott Mclaughlin. I think he really impressed at the start of the year. He's come along and taken a lot of victories this year as well. I think he could be one to watch as well. Newgarden's won 2 championships already. I'm surprised he didn't get this year's as well, but definitely I think Scott McLaughlin is going to be my early pick for next year's championship.
Well, we have a comment from Michael Tiller saying he's surprised Power won the title, but consistency definitely key. So congrats to him, and absolutely echoing a lot of what I just said there as well. Kobe, it's so hard, to take a part of that question first there. Because I can just list off a whole bunch of names, like everybody who drives for Penske, Mclaughlin, Newgarden, Power. You got to think that they're going to be in the championship hunt again next year. Scott Dixon is obviously a perennial contender. We know what Alex Palou can do, and who knows what his situation is going to be going into next season. So, that's still up in the air as well. If he's going to be at Ganassi, if he's going to be doing something with McLaren. And then on the McLaren side of things, you're going to have Alexander Rossi, who, won for the first time in several years this year, and Pato O'Ward has been in a championship fight before. You could certainly see Colton Herta being up there if Andretti can give him a car and he can find that consistency that he seems to be lacking right now. So, I can just keep going and list off all these names that I think could be legitimate championship contenders in 2023. It's very hard to pick a favorite at this point, considering we just wrapped up 2022 a few hours ago.
Yeah, Ben, totally agree with you. IndyCar is super, super competitive. It's really hard to tell who could potentially win the championship next year. But like Josh said, I think if I had to pick someone who could potentially be the early favorite, I think it's certainly got to be Scott McLaughlin. He was really turning it on there in the second half of the season, and I think Newgarden is going to be strong as well, and Power should also be back on form, and maybe we see Dixon run just a little bit better and get in the mix as well. But who knows? We still don't even know who's going to be occupying all the seats in the IndyCar Championship next year. And speaking of drivers who we don't know where they're going, Alex Palou, yes, we had a race winner, and that was him, Mr. Palou. And there's been more speculation about his future this weekend in the paddock. While this very well could have been his final race as a Chip Ganassi racing driver, NBC Sports broadcaster Townsend Bell reported the buyout on Palou's contract is worth $10 million if he's allowed to leave for McLaren. There's also a possibility that Palou and Chip Ganassi could mend fences and stay together next year, to a lot of people's surprise. During the race, Jennifer from the Associated Press tweeted, if this was Colton Herta's last race in IndyCar for a while, then it was a disappointing day for him and Andretti Autosport, because whenever we come to Laguna Seca, we expect Colton Herta to be one of the main contenders to win each and every time. Felix Rosenqvist, he had a really strong race today, and there's growing optimism that he'll be in IndyCar next year. We don't know where though, but there's growing optimism that also that he's not going to be moving over to Formula E next season. Which driver with an uncertain future is best positioned right now? And were you caught off guard by the small possibility, all the rumblings in the paddock, that Palou could actually stay with Ganassi?
I think it's a toss-up between Palou and Herta. And the reason I say that is either Herta, it sounds like there might be a deal in place with AlphaTauri if the FIA were to budge on this super license issue. I don't think they will, even though I think they should. But if they were to do that, he could be in Formula One next year. And I don't think very many people in Colton Herta circles are going to be complaining about having a Formula One drive with a team that's one direct step ahead, or one step away rather, from Red Bull, who are dominating right now with Max Verstappen. So that would be a great result for him. Or he stays in IndyCar with Brian Herta still being involved at Andretti as well, obviously. And I think that's been a good partnership. Of course, they had a bit of a down year this year, but they could go out, maybe try to rebound again next year. So I think Colton Herta's in a pretty good place, as is Alex Palou. I have confidence that something will work out for him. I would be surprised if it's back at Ganassi, but if it is, it's a duo that won a championship last year that, even through all the turmoil of these lawsuits and this contract situation, still clearly have been able to, be professional on the track and even go out and take a win today. So I think it's going to be one of those two that I think, we may not know exactly where they're going to be next year just yet, but we can be confident that they're probably going to be in a good place and can have some good things to expect going forward in 2023. Maybe Colton Herta could, take an F2 seat with, a team like that. And, if the super license points is going to be that much of an issue, maybe AlphaTauri hold him for 2024. There's still the Andretti Global thing up in the air, in which case he'd have a direct line to an F1 seat there. If that gets approved, who knows what's going to happen.
Well, you mentioned the Andretti there as well, and I can't remember who put it in the group chat. I think it might have been you, Kobe, directly. I can't remember. Who mentioned about the Porsche link that Andretti have in Formula E as well. I can't remember who it was.
Yeah, that was me.
There you go. As well, so I completely agree with your point as well. This could be a great opportunity for Andretti to come in as well, because they already work together in Formula E. I reckon the FIA would allow in Andretti if they come in with Porsche as a complete 50-50 deal. Porsche and them could easily pay the 200 million in as well. That's 100 million each. It's a drop in the ocean for the revenue they would get. Formula One would revel at the opportunity of having Porsche, Audi in the series as well, alongside all the other as well. And I think it's a very big possibility as well. So I think, Kobe, you were bang on as well with what you said there a few days ago, that if they probably would just open the doors and let it through. So once again, I agree with you. And you get all the good motorsport things as well out there with your theories. I always enjoy your articles. But going back to this as well, about which driver has got the most uncertain future, I agree with Ben. It's going to be Colton Herta, as you said as well, Ben and Kobe. very poor weekend. I was shocked. I said it in commentary actually as well that he is of the two drivers on the grid who have won here at Laguna Seca before. Both of them started on pole position and won the race both times. That's Colton Herta in the IndyCar era, 19 and 21, and then I think in 1998, I think it was Helio Castroneves in the kart days raced here. Maybe it was 2002. I can't remember which one it was. But either one, Castroneves raced here, took pole position, won the race. So this is the first time we've come to this track and a driver who started on pole hasn't won the race. So that's interesting to remember. Herta has had an off season. I must admit, when I heard that AlphaTauri were interested in him, I thought, him? Really? I mean, he's a very quick driver, but he's too inconsistent for my liking. This year's proven it as well with the things as well. Do you remember back at Mid-Ohio, the accidents he was having as well out there? So, in my opinion, the best American driver with European experience put in is Logan Sargent. I mean, we talk about him a lot, me and Ben on the Encore show as well. Sargent is the best one to put in, and I can't understand why they're not. So,
well, Josh, just to interrupt just to interrupt real quick before I forget, I'm sure we'll talk about the freeze a little bit on the F1 segment here in just a little bit here, but I think, Sargent's kind of had a late season collapse here in F2. He's only picked up a couple of points. I think he's on a stretch of 5 race weekends where he's retired in either the sprint or the feature race. So there's some inconsistency issues with Sargent too, but I'd like to see sorted out. I know Kobe and I were talking in the group chat earlier today, or I saw one of Kobe's texts at least, that maybe Sargent stays another year in F2 before he moves up there. But I think, he and Herta are certainly the two Americans that are closest, but I think they both have consistency issues, and Herta certainly even more so with, I think the whole Andretti team in IndyCar have some consistency issues that they need to sort out. But I think Sargent, that's applicable to him as well.
Yeah, it is. He has had a couple of poor weekends as well, but quite a lot of those has been as well due to contact. That wasn't his fault as well. I mean, Zandvoort as well, he was forced off the track several times because it's a tight track as well. So that incident wasn't his fault. And a couple of other times you got to drive to the penalty for track limits warnings. But he has been more consistent in my book than what Herta has been as well throughout the year as well. And I think Sargent's been coming on quite quick as well. And he knows the European tracks. That's a big up as well. Herta's going to have to come in and learn the European tracks as well. Whereas Sargent doesn't need to. So there's that advantage there. Humperdinck says, well, I think Palou deserves a shot at F1 more than Herta. Alex Palou, I think he came over as well from the European season here as well. Got the championship last year and came over. He is going to be a bigger at risk as well. I'm surprised to hear as well, getting back to the original part of the question as well, that he's going to be staying possibly with Ganassi for next season. I think the win might have helped sort of solidify any reunion between the two, but it's a messy situation going on there as well, as Mclaughlin continue to be Thanos and acquire every single driver available on the planet. But I honestly think as well that Herta is under pressure. I think Palou is going to be under pressure. And I think as well, the biggest driver as well isn't actually in IndyCar. It's involved in all of this as well. It's the fact is that where are we going to place Felix Rosenqvist? Because he's the one I think who stands to lose the biggest, because he doesn't look like he's going to be in Formula E. It doesn't look like he's going to get anything in Formula One ever again, other than be a test role. IndyCar look to be dropping him, and I think Felix Rosenqvist's career could be done with McLaren quite soon because they're running out of seats. So I think if anybody, it's Rosenqvist who's the biggest worry out of the lot. He's the one who, remember, didn't perform all season until he got threatened, and then at Toronto delivered a great performance and has been okay throughout the season. And he made some good moves today, but I think he's the one that we really have to worry about because he's sort of he's a pawn in the chess game and easily can just be thrown away. And I think that's not fair. So watch out for him in the off season. But we don't even have next year's calendar yet, so no one knows anything. They're leaving it incredibly late, the IndyCar lot this year.
And Josh, I'm actually the opposite of you. I'm actually not too concerned about Rosenqvist's future because if you had the Racer.com, Marshall Port did an excellent silly season update for IndyCar, and there's a small possibility, depending on what happens with the Palou situation, Rosenqvist could be back with Arrow McLaren SP next year, and there's also some seats that could be available next season. Especially looking at Cold Herta's situation, if the 26 is available next year. and Marshall Pruitt said that Andretti might be looking to add a veteran like Colton Herta. You can see Juncos Hollinger racing go after. I know we kind of talked about that on Wednesday night, grit tonight, about a possible teammate for Callum Ilott. That could be an option. And the really interesting thing that Pruitt mentioned is Team RLL, Rahal Letterman, Lanigan Racing. If you think back to the comment Graham Rahal made at the end of the street race in Toronto, he was talking about Felix Rosenquist and how he wished they had a spot on their team to sign him next year, and there very well could be a potential opening now. Reportedly, Hy-Vee is not really happy with the performance of Jack Harvey this season because Graham Rahal's had some great runs. Christian Lundgaard has really excelled, but Jack Harvey hasn't really performed on the same level as his two other teammates. So there very well could be a spot open for Rosenquist there. Josh, do you have anything to say to that?
We need to do a whole show on the IndyCar City season. I think that's something that we need to get a special podcast episode.
Let's do it.
Yes, yeah, like we had in the off season. That's what we need. We need a proper podcast episode to talk all of this and try and navigate the world. But that's interesting then. So Harvey could be the one to get thrown out as well, and it's all a mess, isn't it? I know this is the busiest silly season I've ever seen as well. And Joseph's putting as well that Harvey was disappointing a lot this year as well, and I do agree as well. He's had a couple of really poor finishes, and I thought he did well at the 500 though as well. Harvey as well. That was what really surprised me. He led a couple of laps if memory serves correctly as well, and I suppose he has under-delivered, but God, it's so silly. How many cars are McLaren actually allowed to have? Because we've got Montoya doing the 500 with them. We've got O'Ward, Rosenquist, Pilot, Rossi. That's 5 at least. I mean, it's just busy. I don't know what Zach Brown is planning, but I think as well somebody needs to take whatever he's on away from him. I don't know whether it's white powder, special green powder, or something like this as well, and a few leaves from his garden. I don't know. Yeah, orange powder as well. Yeah, little blue pills or something. I don't know. He just needs to get them taken away because I can't understand him right now. The whole McLaren team seems to be just like a giant Hoover, sucking in all the talent from everywhere around the world and then just sort of leaving everybody else with a few dregs. It's not working out. So, I don't know. I like this new McLaren a little bit as well. I think it's got a little bit of bite to it. It used to be all bark. Now the bite is worse than the bark. So, fantastic. But it's all a bit messy for us journalists and fans to try and follow.
Real quick, as I see we're already at 25 minutes. I know we got a lot of show to get to, but I think Rosenquist's situation, a lot of it depends on what's going to happen with Herta and Pilot once they're settled in at wherever they end up. I think there might be an opening or two that you could maybe see Rosenquist sliding into. So once those situations get settled, I think Rosenquist will have an easier time settling his own off-season out.
And I do think that Herta, even though the FIA said this weekend that no, we're not going to have the super license changed, I think Herta will get a super license because one thing as well is that COVID did happen. And the way the super license is that IndyCar should be scored more, but it's not overall. I mean, F3 is comparable with IndyCar. That's not right. So I think it will change. And I think there'll be an exception granted because there's precedence for it in the past. So I think it's just an argument happening at the moment over FIA again, like having control. But I think Herta will get a super license as well. It's a question if Gasly will be released to go to Alpine. So it's weird that we've got, for 3 different series, Formula E, IndyCar, and Formula One, all having the same silly season. It's weird, but it's bridging the gap across the world, which is nice to see.
Yeah, we have some comments in the chat room. Want to hear from David said the IndyCar silly season has been one for the record books with so many moves, and you do wonder if that makes McLaren worse in quality with so many drivers. Is definitely quite chaotic there at McLaren. And he said, and Humperdinck says that Daniel Ricciardo said that he's not too keen on an IndyCar switch. I think he may try several series like Alonso did with the WC IMSA just to pass time while waiting for another shot at Formula One. Yeah, so maybe next year if Daniel Ricciardo isn't able to find a ride in F1, maybe he'll take a sabbatical from Formula One and then try to come back in 2024 when there may be more competitive rides open and available to him. Before we move on, also we were just talking about McLaren and all of that, and I want to bring up a comment Will Power made in the media center at Laguna Seca after winning a championship. Will Power's contract expires at the end of next year, and Power wants to get a contract extension, obviously from Team Penske, and he thinks he's done enough already, to earn one, and a championship certainly helps. And he joked around saying, if Team Penske doesn't give me one, I'll just go ahead and sign with McLaren. So even Will Power is getting in on the fun there, and getting back to the IndyCar season itself. 17 races, 9 different winners. Consistency was very key, as we said. A look at the final grid rating for IndyCar. Will Power was on top. Joseph Newgarden took second. Scott McLaughlin third, both with a 50% top 5 finish rate. Scott Dixon has a 94% top 10 finish rate, but only 56% top 5 rates when you compare it to Will Power's 81%. Alex Palou made it into the grid ranking in 5th with an 81% top 10 finish rate. Gentlemen, how will you remember this season of IndyCar racing? Where does it rank among the other 7 series in the grid ranking?
Well, first, I understand we have another comment from, I think, Michael Tiller here. Yes, in my opinion, Ricciardo deserves to be in F1. The way he lost his seat was a bit unfair, though I do understand it to some degree. Yeah, I think Ricciardo's just, for whatever reason, the partnership with McLaren just hasn't worked out. I don't know if it's just the car doesn't fit his driving style or what the deal is. Of course, he did get that one win at Monza last year, and we'll never forget that. But I think, Ricciardo, certainly, we know what he did at Red Bull. We knew that, he was a worthy opponent to Max Verstappen in equal machinery. So I think, Ricciardo certainly deserves to be in F1. It's just a matter of whether or not there's going to be a seat available for him. But getting back to the IndyCar series, Kobe, I mean, it's been an incredible season. It's up there, when you think of all the other series that we've had in the grid ranking. Of course, Formula One, beating last season was going to be extremely difficult. But I was at least hoping that Ferrari could give us a little bit of a challenge. Mercedes could at least, stay level with where they were last year. But it's been all Max Verstappen, all Red Bull all the time. And if I'm not mistaken, I think he could clinch it as early as the next race in Singapore, if not Japan after that. But, I mean, it's just been a dominant season for him, which is great for Max and Red Bull fans. But for neutral fans looking for an exciting season, it's been a little bit of a letdown to see that Ferrari haven't been able to take that step. Mercedes haven't been able to take that step throughout the season. NASCAR, you could make a case for it with, 18 different winners. Bubba Wallace's win is official now, text clear. So, we keep adding to that count. And I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the show as well. But the IndyCar series is up there. You had a fantastic championship battle. You got a fantastic Indianapolis 500, a great Indianapolis 500 champion, great series champion. It was a great year to be an IndyCar series fan.
Absolutely agree with you as well. I think this year has given us all the championship fight we all needed because we weren't getting it from other series. And I was really, really impressed with it. From race 1, actually, with Scotty Mack getting the win. Race 2 really made me go, oh, wow, this is going to be good as well with that race in Texas as well. Indy 500, another classic as well. I got to pick a winner right in a week in advance. Thank you very much. Straight after qualifying. I'll never forget that I got the Indy 500 winner right. I just wish I had some money on it as well, but at least I won the Grand National, which is the horse race here in the UK. So I'll take that. I think in terms of IndyCar seasons I've covered, it's the best one, certainly. It was one of the best Indy 500s I've covered. And certainly as well, it was, I think, in terms of the grid ranking as well, as I whack my mic, in terms of the grid ranking, I think as well, MotoGP is going really well. That's heating up nicely for the end of the year. NASCAR's going quite good. What I've covered as well. I think it'll go 3rd with a possibility of 2nd, depending on what happens with NASCAR and MotoGP. So which one of those has the better end of the season, it'll slot in 3rd position as well, or 2nd even. But F1, as I agree with Ben, it's been a bit of a letdown this year. I mean, Verstappen has won 5 races in a row now. He's won 30 career races, and he's now won 11 out of the 16 races, and mathematically he can win the title next time out if he gets the fastest lap, wins the race, and Leclerc doesn't score. Which, face it, it's Singapore, it's a 2-hour race, it's taxing, it's the most difficult race of the year for commentators, for drivers, for everybody, and Ferrari don't have a great finishing rate there. So all hail Max Verstappen, 2022 world champion next time out in Singapore. Megan will be happy because she doesn't have to wake up at 5 a.m. in the morning to commentate on Japan as well for the world championship to be decided.
Yeah, and looking at last season in Formula One, we all know that an encore would be extremely hard to match because that was such an impressive and really great season of Formula One, despite the way it ended. But getting back to IndyCar, what an incredible season it was to see several drivers in the hunt for the championship. Just like this, Joseph Newgarden made it really interesting, but it just wasn't enough. So real shout out to Joseph for really putting in a good effort there, and all the drivers for having a solid championship season. We hope the 2023 NTT INDYCAR Series season is even better than the one we just saw wrap up. So once again, congratulations to Will Power, the 2022 NTT INDYCAR Series Champion, Team Penske for the Teams Championship, Chevrolet for the Manufacturers Championship, and Rahal Letterman Lanigan racing driver Christian Lundgaard on winning Rookie of the Year over David Malukas.
A very exciting IndyCar season and a very exciting conclusion to the season as well. And definitely one we're going to be remembering for quite some time. Another season that we've been talking about a little bit, Formula One. Once again, the Italian Grand Prix was here, and the race this time ended under caution. The safety car came out. This is the 13th time F1 Grand Prix race has ended under the safety car. Leclerc, he was second place, so many were hopeful for a restart, especially the Tifosi at Monza. They wanted to see a restart, but that did not occur. There was speculation of a red flag if the restart wasn't going to be in time. That wasn't called for. Compared to Baku last season, where we saw Max Verstappen crash on that main straight, they brought the red flag, and there was a shootout to the finish. The Marshals, they struggled a little bit getting Daniel Ricciardo's vehicle out of the racetrack. That was just one of the things that was delaying it, and then the race just ended under the caution flag. And after the race, Toto Wolff said they followed the officials, the rules, and accepted that the race ended under the safety car. A lot of folks citing what happened in Abu Dhabi last year. Ben, Josh, are you satisfied with how the race played out? And would this even be a discussion if Leclerc had won under the safety car?
Well, I don't really care who's leading or who's second or who's winning or whose home race it is. You know how I feel about overtime. I don't really care if a race ends under a safety car. It's certainly a bit of a letdown if you're looking for an entertaining finish. But, I've got to take issue with one of our colleagues here, Matt Bro. I know he's new to the grid team. I don't mean to launch this as a personal attack or anything. I wish he was here to counter me so we could have this debate. But I saw a tweet from him after the F1 race wrapped up saying, ending races under caution behind the safety car makes me appreciate NASCAR more than F1. At least NASCAR attempts to make the finish worth watching. Now, everybody knows where I stand on the issue of NASCAR overtime. So one day, hopefully, Matt and I can have that debate here on this show. But as for today, it was clear the McLaren was stuck in gear or something. They were having a hard time rolling it back. It was taking longer than expected. So the only way that you were going to be able to restart the race is if you red flagged it. Now, you can't even have overtime in Formula One if you wanted to, because there's no refueling in Formula One. The cars are fueled to the specific race distance, so you can't just add a lap or two. That would completely mess up the calculations that the teams put in before the races. It's not even an option to do it if you wanted to, at least without a major regulation change. So I think, when you factor in where we stand on the issue of red flags as well, and Josh, I know we share this opinion, red flags should only be used in the instance where they're absolutely necessary for safety purposes. The Indianapolis 500 has had this controversy, even just this year when Jimmy Johnson crashed. That wasn't a crash that warranted a red flag if it happens on lap 60, but because it happens with less than 10 laps to go and the Indy 500 fans want a green flag finish, IndyCar decides we're going to red flag the race so we can get a final restart. And then there's a crash on the last lap anyway, so you don't even get your green flag finish. The race still ends under caution. So, congratulations there. But I think, ultimately today, I think that, the FIA, they probably could have had a contingency plan in place to maybe get one lap in, if they've been able to get the McLaren off the racing surface a little bit quicker. But ultimately, this is honestly probably what should have happened at Abu Dhabi last year. And it's a shame that, the fantastic season that we had last year would have ended under a safety car, but it certainly would have been a lot less controversial than what we ended up getting. So I think everybody will take this one today, even though it happened in Italy with a Ferrari in second. I still am satisfied with how it played out.
Damned if you do, damned if you don't. That's
No
pretty
doubt.
much how it is. I think we've got some comments as well before I give my answer. Iron Kong 26 says 7 out of 10 for the IndyCar season. I think I'd go with that. Humperdinck's only gone for 4 out of 10 by me. What takes it 10 out of 10 for you? Iron Kong says favourite race of the weekend was Laguna Seca. Favorite race of the weekend for me was actually the Formula 3 sprint race. I think that was absolutely fantastic. And the Formula 3 feature, actually. The Formula 3 in general was great. Mtila says, Mtila 2006 says, in my opinion, although Verstappen did have a grip on the race ended under caution and behind the safety car. No, I disagree with that. Well, I agree with that as well in too many respects, is that they set the precedent last year in Baku that red flag, last 5 laps, will have a standing start restart. I didn't agree with that, but it was a dramatic finish, I'll give you that. But F1's a sport, not entertainment. We're sort of trying to go 50-50. And I do agree with Ben that the red flag should only be out for a safety concern. But I did put a tweet out, and I stand by the tweet, that we had an unusual error again from the FIA. Now, this wasn't the error of the fact that the safety car was out and the race finished behind the safety car. It wasn't an error for the fact that Ricciardo's car was stuck on the track. The error from the FIA, which is why I think a red flag should have been called today, was that the safety car went out and picked up the wrong car as the race leader. It picked up George Russell as the race leader. Now, that completely that just disbanded the entire field again. It put lap cars a lap down again, and it created a situation where we couldn't go racing anyway because Tsunoda and Bottas were stuck in between Verstappen and Leclerc, and the safety car didn't let them through. So if the race had gone green again, it wouldn't have been a fair thing like we saw in Abu Dhabi. So as soon as they had realised, with limited time remaining, the fact that they had picked up the wrong car and the entire field was a mess, the red flag should have come out so they could have fixed the field. Whether or not we restart the race, that's another question. But the red flag should have been out because the safety car had the wrong car and we had cars going at different speeds when a digger came on the track. So it's sort of a 50% safety thing and a 50% that the FIA made a mistake. Now, the FIA throughout the weekend have been making these same mistakes. It took a lap for the virtual safety car to come out early on for Sebastian Vettel. It took a lap and a half for Ricciardo's car to get a safety car. In Formula 2, this morning, it took 2 laps for the red flag to come out when a car was in a dangerous position where it couldn't have been extracted and the tyre wall was damaged. In Formula 3 as well, the race ended under a red flag after a crash at Lesmo 2, but then they all lined up in the pit lane with 5 laps to go. We thought, okay, we're going to have a restart here. This is going to how we define the championship. Then all of a sudden, the championship leader gets a 5-second time penalty. Then we get the message that the race will not be resumed. And then we all stand around for 26 minutes not knowing who the champion is, who the race winner is, what the order is, and 4 different drivers thinking they've won the Formula 3 championship.
Josh, I think you hit the cough button by accident or something.
Thank you. Thank you. How long have I done that for? Just since I said Formula 2? Yeah.
Yeah, just a few seconds.
Lovely. So Formula 2 as well, we had a strange situation where we had drivers getting 10-second stop-go penalties for what was a simple off-track excursion for 5-second penalties added. There's been no consistency for the stewards this weekend. There's been a lack of awareness of when to deploy safety cars, when to deploy red flags when it was correct. And I think as soon as the safety car picked up the wrong car and a dangerous situation ensured where we had cars going at different speeds, when a digger had come onto the track in a very tight, dangerous part, and it's blind to the Lesmos as well, it should have been an instant red flag. That's the safety concern there. And I do completely agree with Ben that it should have been only for safety that we throw the red flags, because anything else, it doesn't really matter. I did have a slight problem that we ended up behind the safety car because I thought it was a bit of a mess. I don't have a problem that the reason we ended behind the safety car, because it was the right decision. We ran out of laps, so it was going to happen anyway. I'm fine with that. I'm slightly annoyed that they all pitted and it didn't work out for Ferrari, but that's a Ferrari strategy issue that they keep having this weekend. We'll get on to that in the next question. So mainly my argument in my anger goes towards the FIA once again being incompetent. So I hope that gets brought up in the meeting tomorrow with Mohammed Ben Sulayem with the teams, where they discuss how to improve the FIA structure. And I hope it's the fact that you sack these guys in the stewards room and you get a race director who can actually follow the rules and not have a mess of rules that we've got ever since Michael Masi made the mistake in Abu Dhabi. And they admitted it was a human error, but that human error keeps now costing us because we've got 2 different rule sets for one situation. It doesn't make any sense. The stewards are now second guessing themselves. The race director, even though it's a different race director, they are second guessing themselves, and that is what makes accidents. That's what gets people killed. These guys are in charge of the lives of the drivers, the marshals, everyone in the racetrack. And them second guessing themselves all the time is causing problems. Safety cars should come out immediately for Ricciardo. As soon as this error with a driver on track and a digger on track in a different situation should have been a red flag. And also, I've just remembered, why on earth didn't the safety car come out or even an instant red flag? Because Danny Ricciardo, and I hope he gets a reprimand for this, I noticed when I was watching it back, didn't spot it in commentary, watched it back. Danny Ricciardo was climbing in between the Tech Pro barriers. Now, that's a safety device. He was climbing in between them to try and get out. What was that about? I mean, everyone, the stewards at Monza and the race director this weekend has honestly slipped, and it needs to be improved quite quickly. And I'm very much annoyed with it because safety at Monza just seems to have gone down like that. So I'm not happy with the FIA. They're becoming too. I'm trying to think. Too political on themselves as well. It's weird.
They're becoming too political.
Yeah, because they're second guessing themselves.
For too long.
Yeah, but now they're becoming overly political because they're analysing themselves. They're second guessing themselves. They're getting involved in things that they don't need to as well, and they're changing their own minds. And it feels like we're in a civil war almost with the FIA itself. It's weird. We're all standing back, and the FIA are shooting each other. We've got Mohammed Ben Sulayem saying, "Well, this is not the Michael Mazzio." We've got the stewards going, "Well, we haven't changed, and these are the rules we're applying." The rules keep changing, and we're in a civil war. So I can't wait until Endgame because that'll just completely finish it all.
We got a lot of comments in the chat room about this. First one, and Randy picking up Kirkwood, upgrade or not? I think we all agree it is an upgrade from AJ Floyd, but we all know where Andretti is compared to the big teams of Penske and Chip Ganassi. But then Formula One, we posed the question, should the FIA adopt a red flag policy in the chat room? Humperdinck, no, absolutely not to the red flag policy. No, I think people don't appreciate how amazing the racing F1 has been, and a single finish under yellow is something to criticize. You can't manufacture the drama as it dilutes genuine drama.
Well, Joe, just real quick on that point, I will say, what was this, a 13th race in the entire history of Formula One under safety car? I think NASCAR has 13 overtime finishes per season, it seems like. Every other race, especially in the lower series where you have drivers on the limit as the laps are winding down. The truck series, how many overtime finishes do they have in a year? So even though I disagree with it, I'll at least grant to you that it makes more sense in a series like NASCAR where, you have refueling, you have situations where it's much more common. 13 safety car finishes in how many? Over 1,000 Formula One races. I think you guys will be okay if it happens every once in a while.
I think that we're talking about this because of Abu Dhabi last year. Simple as. And
I saw F1 XED was trending on Twitter again after they ended up under the safety car. Everybody's bringing up Abu Dhabi again.
Team LH must be having a right field day.
So a couple more comments in the chat room from Michael Taylor. I have to agree with you, Josh. The FI did get things mixed up in the race, and things just got jumbled up. I mean, yeah, mistakes happen, but we can't have that often. Fossey Bear, I think favorite race of the weekend, Kansas. I thought the weekend overall was good. Of course, we're going to get to NASCAR shortly. Personally, for race to end under safety car, the positions are locked in and the winner is decided, and that is part that I disagree with. And then he also says, Ben, I think you and I spoke on this before, but for those who don't know, I don't believe a race should end behind the safety car because there's no competition in that. So we thank everyone for all the comments in the chat room. We figured this was going to be a hot topic, but Josh, I think you brought up a good point. Seeing that tractor coming out on track, I recall it looked like one vehicle had to swerve because they were warming their tires up and didn't see it coming. Did you saw that as well?
I did, yeah, and that's why I was really annoyed as well, because it's a blind corner, the Lesmos, as well, because there's a tree on the inside and an Armco barrier, and it sweeps round, and it's slightly banked as well, so you can't see the exit of Lesmo until about a nanosecond before you get there, and it was such a dangerous part of the track. That's why we had a red flag this morning in Formula 3, because they had to come onto the track because you can't access it. It's an old circuit, this as well. It's never been modified since the infield and oval was built back in the 50s and 60s as well. So it's a dangerous circuit, but the FIA are supposed to make it as safe as possible, and this weekend they really weren't. I mean, it should have been a red flag just for that, to be fair, and I think we should have ended the race, to be fair, because I think Verstappen, everybody goes, oh, well, Leclerc would have won the race if he had that. No, Verstappen was leading by 17 seconds. I mean, if anything, it was a pit window. If the safety car came out and Verstappen didn't take it, that Leclerc could have possibly got ahead. But it was Ferrari that really killed the race today for themselves, and Red Bull had no fault whatsoever. I know probably a few people on Twitter going, oh, yeah, of course they ended it behind the safety car because Max Verstappen and it's Red Bull. But no, they didn't do anything today other than do a fantastic race, take the lead again after a grid penalty, and keep on winning. That Red Bull is one of the best F1 cars I've ever seen. It's brilliant in this new regulation.
It is a fast car. Another comment, I agree with Josh that if it weren't for Abu Dhabi, this would not be as a discussion for the safety. Definitely all sorts of folks talking about.
Sorry, just go across. You sneeze, hand sanitizer. COVID's still a thing, people.
Very good tip. Now, one of the things, Charles Leclerc, second place. Ferrari had an interesting strategy, and I definitely want to get your take on this because we know since 2019, the Italian Grand Prix has at least had 2 pauses in the race where they're a safety car, virtual safety car, or red flag. Ferrari, when that first virtual safety car came out for what we saw Vettel going out, they pitted, but he was on a long stint, came in later for the soft tires. A lot of people were saying if the pace for Ferrari was the same as Red Bull, we would have seen that strategy work very likely, but it didn't. The safety car, of course, came very close to the end of the race where it ended under the safety car. Did you believe Ferrari had the right strategy based on the past trends of this race?
Well, when the virtual safety car came out, I said, yes, this is a good decision from Ferrari. They're getting in the pit lane and they're doing it early, and this will be a good strategy. I expected them to go into the hard tyres. Didn't expect them to go into the medium. Didn't expect that. So I thought, oh, that was a bit interesting. I thought hard tyres, go long, and then pit later on, put on a set of softs, bang, you've got a great strategy. No, they put on the medium combat tyres, went later on and messed up their own strategy. The soft tyres amazed me today. They went so far into the race as well, and Red Bull were doing more time on that than we knew. Ferrari didn't. So, if anything, it's a criticism of Ferrari for not doing the deck data, that is, on the soft compound tyre and only running the mediums and the hards in the practice sessions and saving their Q3, their soft tyres for qualifyings as well, and another running Q3 because they knew Sainz at the back of the grid, so they had to give a toe to Leclerc, even though they didn't do that for some bizarre reason, to try and get Leclerc onto pole position. But Ferrari's strategy has been all over the place this weekend, as I mentioned. We had Q3 where Leclerc was towing Sainz, even though Sainz is starting at the back. Why was that? We had this strange situation as well where they were constantly changing the plans throughout the race as well. They're asking their drivers their input as well. The drivers can drive the car, but they're not inputting in the race. So, no, everything was too much of a mess. Everything was, again, all over the place. And I said it on the broadcast. I've said it on GRIDnet before as well. Ferrari have just lost in front of the Tifosi when they had a golden opportunity to win. Mattia Binotto and the strategist as well, they're going to be picked up by the Tifosi and thrown off the nearest cliff. They're done. They are done. There was a warning shot across the bow at the beginning of the weekend to Mattia Binotto, and I honestly don't think they'll see out. They'll see out the season, I think, but they won't be there in 2023. I honestly think that was the final nail in the coffin. It's a shame. I hope Mattia Binotto can stay around because he's a great technical mind. Don't think he's the right team principal, but their strategy department, the guy who runs it as well, Lucas something or other, it's a joke. It's a joke. I don't know where he qualified, but maybe Krusty the Clown's university, I don't know. But he's not doing anything good for strategy. If anything, he's killing Ferrari. It's not good. It's not good.
I'll never pass up an opportunity to make fun of Ferrari's strategy, but on this particular day, I don't think it was even one of their worst ones. I think Red Bull and Max Verstappen, like we were talking about earlier, they just have one of the best cars we've ever seen. And now that they have the reliability issues sorted out that we saw at the beginning of the season, giving them some trouble, it's been an absolutely dominant year for them. And Verstappen was, climbing his way through the field. I'm not convinced that he wouldn't have won anyway. So I think Ferrari had to try something different. It didn't work out. You can look back at hindsight as always 2020, but on this particular day, Ferrari have done a lot worse than they did on this particular day here today. I do agree with you, Josh. I don't think Binotto has much of a future if things keep trending in this direction. But then again, given Ferrari standards, I don't even think it was that bad today, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's not the worst one, but it's definitely up there as with a long list. I think it's the worst one if you're an Italian that you haven't won the Grand Prix and had an opportunity. I think that's what's going to sting the most. But certainly, it's not the worst one they've had this season. I think 3 wheels in Zandvoort was one. Monaco, I just put as well. I think that's the worst one as well. Silverstone as well. Did they win Silverstone?
Was
No, they
Sainz,
won
wasn't it, I
Silverstone.
think? Yeah.
Sainz won Silverstone. Okay, so they won in there, but not with Leclerc. So yeah, that was it. Leclerc restarting on hard compound tires that were 42 laps old or something or other, and then that was a bad one. I mean, Ferrari's strategy department is honestly the worst thing I have ever seen ever in motorsport. They do not know what they are doing. If this is a master plan for 2023, I am terrified. I am absolutely terrified because as an F1 fan, we've just come off of 2021, which was one of the best seasons ever of Formula One, to this, which has been the most dominant season ever. And people say, oh, really? Max Verstappen could win the title next time out, and he could break the record for most wins in a season. That's 13. He's on 11, and there's 6 races to go. Easily done. Easily done.
6 races to go, and we were just about to talk about that. But before that, a couple of comments. I won't deny that Ferrari livery with the yellow anniversary touch was nice. But yeah, I think Binotto's days are numbered as team principal, and I think they will almost be forced into changing the team principle just because their year in race strategy, especially after Australia, has been so poor. They started off so fast, but then it just seems like a podium. It's an achievement for them when really they should be contending for wins week after week. And speaking about wins week after week, looking at the 6 remaining races, it looks good for Max Verstappen. The first weekend of October in Singapore, he has a 116-point lead in the Formula One World Championship. Leclerc will need to essentially outscore Verstappen by 19 points per race to get a shot at the championship. Red Bull, the speed they showed today, looking great, and they have some favorable tracks. Granted, Verstappen has not won in Singapore, but he has a second-place finish there. That was his best. He has wins in Japan, United States, Mexico, Brazil, and Abu Dhabi. All these tracks where he has won, Verstappen, he could position himself to win the championship really, really soon. And as you mentioned, Josh, break that record, and especially those tracks are looking really good. But the big thing, Lewis Hamilton is eliminated from the championship contention with today's results. He is done for. No Ace Championship in 2022. Ben, thoughts on last year's runner-up, Lewis Hamilton, out of championship already, and his future with Mercedes and F1?
Well, if we're being honest, he was out of a championship a while ago. It's just now mathematically there's no path forward for him. But we all know Max Verstappen's going to win his 2nd consecutive championship this year. But I will say I would have expected Mercedes to make some more gains than they have by now. And I think we're running out of time for Lewis to keep that streak alive of having at least one win every season. Now, I'm not going to count him out entirely until the checkered flag waves at Abu Dhabi, given his track record. But, it has been quite shocking to see them go from one Nicholas Latifi spin away from an 8th world championship to, being clearly a pretty distant 3rd behind Red Bull and Ferrari this year. Now, they might still finish 2nd in the constructors. Never doubt Ferrari's ability to, not let us down with the memes and everything. And they could, have another strategy blunder that pulls Mercedes back into 2nd place. But I think it's pretty clear based on car performance, Mercedes are a distant 3rd, when obviously last year they were right level with Red Bull and gave us an epic championship battle for the ages. So it's been very disappointing. Now, I know Lewis I think he has a year left on his contract, so we'll see him again next year in all likelihood, and he can try to rebound and take the 8th world title then. And again, I wouldn't put it past him given who he is and what he's accomplished in his sport. But to see him mathematically eliminated from a championship, this, relatively speaking, early in the season, when you consider being eliminated from a title fight, mathematically speaking, it's quite frankly unbelievable.
Yeah, this reminds me a lot of Mercedes in 2013. It seems like a development year for them as well. Like they're going to slowly get the things back up and running, and then in next year as well, 2023, they're going to be bang straight on there, going for wins again as well. It looks like they've got the propulsing issue fixed on that Mercedes as well, which is great news. Now I think they've got to take the remaining 6 races now. Now the car's fixed, they've got to take this as a sort of extra preseason test because the car's not going to change that much next year. So they've got to test their magic car, that car as well. They've got to really get aero on that. In the practice sessions, they need to sacrifice some data as well. They've got to sacrifice some pace in the sessions to know where they are on the weekend. They've got to get out there, learn as much as they can, make the change to the next car as well. And I think there's only 2 more races on the calendar where they could win. Japan and Brazil, 2 tracks that are a bit difficult to overtake on as well because Abu Dhabi's changed. You can overtake there now. So really, I would say Japan is possibly possibly a winning spot for them as well, especially if it's wet. Singapore is an outside chance of that next time out, but that's all really. Singapore is a true Grand Prix for me. It's a circuit where you battle heat, you battle fatigue, you battle the clock, really, because it's not a 58 lap race or whatever it is. It's always 2 hours. We always go to 2 hours there. There's always a safety car there as well, at least one. So it's going to be a very demanding race there. And I think Mercedes might just have something to pick up on there. So we'll see. But Lewis Hamilton out of title contention. It's weird, and that's the first time in over a decade as well that he hasn't been in a title fight. And well, is he really going to stick around as a team that can't give him a winning car? Who knows? I think the rumor in the mill at the moment is that he'll finish in 2023, and in 2024, Daniel Ricciardo will take over the seat as well, as Ricciardo will be their test driver next year. That's something that I was hearing as well. Ricciardo's already said as well when he's walking to the grid that he's taking 2023 off as well, and he'll come back in 2024. And the rumor was that it's with Lewis Hamilton's seat alongside George Russell, which I think is actually a decent pairing. Ricciardo's still quick, but Jacques Villeneuve also said in the F1 TV show this weekend, he's had over 11 seasons in Formula 1 now. He's only been really competitive for 3 of them. And I think that's a fair criticism of Ricciardo. He's had 4 very bad years in Formula 1. So does anybody want him? Well, on his day, Ricciardo is still the last driver in history to record a Grand Slam. So yeah, I'd want him on my team.
And before we wrap up F1, a couple comments from Mike Tiller. That's why I said last time Verstappen has a huge win. Unless something happens, he pretty much has the championship in the bag. Singapore next race, if he gets a win, it'll be secure. And Hamilton, mathematically limited. That's a bit tough to see. Mercedes pretty much got every title 2014 to 2020. So this is quite a shakeup. And then also, I agree with Ben. Mercedes are struggling in this style of car, has me mystified a bit. For Lewis, I think he'll get a couple more years in F1 before retiring. The Mike Tiller, Ben Verstappen has a huge lead. 2 comment built, not huge win. We get it. Totally understand.
Still a huge win, to be fair.
Still a huge win, winning his first Italian Grand Prix too, they said. So amazing that all his years of winning, first time he got to step on the podium there in Monza. Joshua, thank you so much for your time when it comes to F1 and IndyCar. We got to ask you before we let you go, what's your one shining moment?
I'm glad you've asked me either F1 or IndyCar because I think F3 would have taken it, or the F2 race as well. So many things have happened this weekend. It's been another Champions weekend. I think F1 as well, one shining moment. That definitely, I think, goes for Nick de Vries. I think overall, actually, Nick de Vries. Well done to Will Power, though, for getting the title. Credit where credit's due there. But I think Nick de Vries really impressed me. We haven't talked about him much here as well, but just to quickly wrap up on him as well. Alexander Albon having appendicitis as well, missing this race. Nick de Vries had 20 minutes in free practice 3, then went into qualifying. He out-qualified Latifi, and then not only did he outpace Latifi in the race, he actually got points. he finished in 9th place. He got 2 World Championship points, which means in a field of 20 drivers, Nicholas Latifi is 21st. That's how insane this championship is. Nick de Vries got World Championship points on debut in the Williams, and Latifi hasn't managed it all season long. And Tiller agrees with me there, is Nick de Vries as well. Bang on with the same point with me as well. I think Nicholas Latifi's time in Formula One is coming to a very short end. In fact, I'll be surprised if he's in the car in Singapore, because I think they'll get de Vries and Albon in there straight away. De Vries deserves a shot at F1 and deserves that. He's a former World Champion, and that whole performance this weekend, magical. I couldn't be more happy for Nick de Vries.
An amazing performance by Nick de Vries. Encourage everyone to visit the links in the video description to Joshua's Burst channel for all the watch-alongs for Formula One, MotoGP, and more races in 2022. And Kobe and Adam, thank you so much for your patience. We got to talk about another championship that looks like it's going to be wrapping up very shortly, the Repco Supercar Series.
Yeah, Joe. And in the second Supercars race of the weekend, we had a red flag during the early stages of the race involving one of the Shelby Power Ford Mustangs from Dick Johnson Racing. Anton De Pasquale and Brody Kostecki made contact, sending Anton hard into the wall and ended his race. However, that was a big moment with Will Brown hitting the wall hard on the right side in the driver's door. Brown and Mark Winterbottom got together, causing the incident and putting Brown out of the race. Brown didn't get to compete in the third and final race of the weekend either, because the car was just too damaged. The cameras caught Brown and Frosty having a heated discussion. This situation just didn't affect the rest of Brown's weekend, but also has major implications for the Supercars Premier Crown Jewel event too. The Bathurst 1000, Motorsport.com reported the potential loss of Brown's chassis, which would mean going to a backup chassis, and this could put the Bathurst wildcard entry for Greg Murphy and Richie Stanaway at risk. Adam, is Brown's frustration with Winterbottom justified? Also, should Murphy and Stanaway be concerned that Bathurst may not happen?
Yeah, Kobe. If they, Greg Murphy and Richie Stanaway, they want to get on the grid for the Bathurst 1000. I mean, Greg Murphy has won the Bathurst 1000, and he had one of the most dramatic laps. It was called the Lap of the God, so he wants to be back on that grid in October. So, and you feel for Will Brown. He wanted to compete in the last race ever at Pukekohe Park. Unfortunately, that didn't happen because of a wreck involving himself and Mark Winterbottom. I mean, I can understand Will Brown's frustration, and hopefully we can see the wild card entry of Greg Murphy and Richie Stanaway on the grid for the great race in October.
Yeah, for sure. It's always nice to see Greg Murphy back at the mountain. And Adam, please correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't Greg Murphy also try to run last year, but it ended up not happening? Or am I thinking about a different?
That is correct. He and Richie Stanaway tried to compete last year as well. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. So Greg Murphy and Richie Stanaway want to get on the grid this year for the Bathurst 1000.
Yeah, definitely. And in the final race of the weekend and the last race ever at Pukekohe Park, the ending delivered quite a classic that we'll be talking about for a while. The final laps, the crowd on its feet, Shane Van Gisbergen and Cam Waters put on one heck of a show. Hard racing, both drivers on the edge. It almost went wrong when they touched, but SVG eventually got around Waters to win at home, sweeping both races on Sunday in New Zealand. SVG won for the 18th time this season, tying Scott McLaughlin's record for most wins all time in a single season. Did Pukekohe Park go out with a bang? And do you think we'll ever see a driver in Supercars have the year that Shane is having ever again, especially when you consider the new Gen 3 car next year?
Pukekohe Park went out with an absolute bang. That was great racing between SVG and Cam Waters. That was hard. It was Holden versus Ford, Australia versus New Zealand. And like you mentioned, the crowd at Pukekohe Park was going nuts. They wanted to see a Kiwi win for the final time at that legendary track, and they got it. SVG, what can you say? tying a driver like Scott McLaughlin for most wins in a season, wow. We haven't seen a driver like SVG since Scott McLaughlin, and others as well. Mark Scaife was really dominant back in the day when he was competing. Craig Lowndes, even Jamie Whincup, who's a 7-time Repco Supercars champion, he was really good. So will we see another driver like SVG again down under? I don't think so.
Yeah. Looking at the season that SVG's having, it's quite remarkable. And I've said it in previous shows. We need to take time and appreciate what we're seeing right now. Kind of like last season in Formula One, that incredible championship battle between Hamilton and Verstappen, because you may not see that either ever again or for a very long time. And we have no idea knowing what the new Gen 3 regulations are going to bring, whether it's still going to be a SVG cakewalk or we're going to see so many winners like we've seen this year in the NASCAR Cup Series. It's really hard to tell the direction that Supercars is going, but we know it's certainly heading in a positive direction. But in terms of parity, we have no idea. So for right now, this very well could be the last time we see someone have this amount of dominance in the Repco Supercars Championship, and we got to give hands down to Shane Van Gisbergen for what an incredible season he's had. And it looks like he's definitely has one hand on the championship right now. It's only a matter of time before he wraps this thing up. And the next race weekend for Supercars is the great race, the Bathurst 1000 on October 9th. Before we let you go for tonight, Adam, what's your grid one shining moment from this racing weekend?
Wow, you think about all the great moments that have happened, but I got to give a call to Bubba Wallace. His second career win, and it was incredible. Got the number 45 Root Insurance Toyota for 2311 Racing. It was Kurt Busch in the number 45 car that won Kansas earlier in the year, but Bubba Wallace, wow, what can you say? He put on a masterful show all day long in the Sunflower State. So Bubba Wallace winning his second career win without it being, and this one wasn't rain shortened. So that was a good thing. So to me, Bubba Wallace winning in Kansas is my one shining moment. We give a call to Will Power, Max Verstappen, and of course, Shane Van Gisbergen. This weekend was full of motorsports excellence across the world.
A lot of motorsports this weekend, and one of them was the Royal Rally Championship. WRC saw Thierry Neuville capture his first win of 2022. Autonic came home to make a Hyundai 1-2-3 with Danny Sordo in third. Colin Rovanperä, the points leader, again struggled. He came home 15th place in the Acropolis Rally. The next race is Rally New Zealand. And here's the thing for Rovanperä. If he exits New Zealand with a points lead of 60 or more, he has the World Rally Championship wrapped up. He currently has a 53-point lead, so he's coming down to it, trying to get his first WRC championship. And we see we have a comment in the chat room. My one shining moment would have to be De Vries as well. I'll go with Bubba Wallace for that show he put on in Kansas. He dominated that last stage, and that's what we're going to be talking about next. The final race on this show, the NASCAR Cup Series Hollywood Casino 400.
Yeah, and it was quite a chaotic Hollywood Casino 400 Kansas Speedway, which saw 9 cautions leading up to the end of stage 2. And as we said yesterday's pre-race show, this Kansas fall race always seems to be the more crazier one, with a lot of things happening all at once. And the rest of the race was caution-free. Saw a duel between Bubba Wallace, Denny Hamlin, and Christopher Bell there at the end. Bubba Wallace ended up winning his second career Cup race and punched his ticket to the round of 12 in the Owners Championship playoffs. He's also the 8th different winner this year, and now both 2311 Racing drivers have won a race in 2023. Both Wallace and Kurt Busch swept Kansas this year in the number 45 Toyota. And starting with you, Joe, we saw some great racing all day at Kansas, one of the more challenging mile-and-a-half tracks on the schedule. What will this win do for Bubba's confidence as a driver, and how far can he go in the Owners' Championship for 2311 Racing?
For the Owners' Championship, this is huge for that number 45 team, especially after everything they've been through, losing Kurt Busch. Doubtful when Kurt Busch is going to return, possibly next year. To go out there and get the win, it really shows this team, they'll rally from whatever is tossed at them. Bubba Wallace, this is going to be huge for him because a lot of folks, oh, you won a rain-shortened race. We've seen the same thing occur when Michael Waltrip won the Daytona 500 rain-shortened. People, oh, you won a rain-shortened, you didn't really want it. This race at Kansas, we saw great racing throughout the day. We saw cars all over the place, the low line, the high line, the middle line even was really good at times. Bubba Wallace went out there, drove a great race, and held off everyone in the last stage, caution-free, to get a win. Very well-deserved win for that team. It really shows he belongs in the Cup Series for any doubters out there that says he only won because it was rain-shortened or NASCAR put a fix. Not true. He went out there. He put on a show. He got to win. Huge boost for 23-11, the 45 in the championship for the points, in the team's points, and for his confidence. Somebody said this could open more wins for him. I think he's going to be contending for more wins the rest of this year and potentially next year if they have a good car.
Yeah, it's absolutely massive. And, I always recommend avoiding the NASCAR Facebook comment sections, but even they, I think, are, acknowledging, look, I mean, let's give the guy credit where it's due. You can love him, you can hate him, but Bubba Wallace wears his heart on his sleeve, and he straight up earned this victory today. There's no doubt about it. There's no caveat about the rain. It was a tremendous victory for him and the 2311 Racing team, and it validates the decision to make this swap, to put Ty Gibbs in 23, a driver who's just fortunate to have the opportunity to gain some Cup Series experience, put him in the car that's not in the owners' playoffs, put Bubba Wallace in the 45. I still don't think Bubba Wallace is going to win the Owners' Championship. I don't know if the 2311 is quite at that level just yet, but he's certainly got a better shot than a guy who's only made a handful of Cup Series starts, who's not even had his 20th birthday yet in Ty Gibbs. And as Ty, it has been absolutely phenomenal as he continues to work up the ranks and everything. He's had some good runs in the Cup Series. Let's give credit where it's due. But Bubba Wallace is proving that that this decision by 2311, by Michael Jordan and Denny Hamlin to make this swap is absolutely validated. And it's a huge confidence boost, I think, for everybody at the team to know that both of their regular drivers, Kurt Busch, Bubba Wallace, have wins this year. It's a fantastic step forward for 2311 this season as they've expanded to 2 cars. And who knows how far they can go in the Owners' Championship. We've got Talladega coming up later in the playoffs. Obviously, Bubba Wallace won there last year. So it could be a bit of a longer run than I think a lot of people were expecting when they made the swap at the start of the playoffs.
Yeah, Ben, I think a lot of people, if they're doing a bracket, I know a lot of fans are doing a bracket for the Drivers' Championship, but if they were doing like a bracket for the Owners' Championship, they probably have Bubba Wallace been one of the first 4 out, not making a deep playoff run, and looking now, he's on to the round of 12 in the Owners' Championship playoffs, definitely going a lot further than what many people expected, and I totally agree with the point you made. This definitely validates the point to put him in the 45 so 2311 Racing is going for something. Just think if Bubba Wallace did happen to make the playoffs as a driver, he'd be going to the round of 12 and that a lot further. And then you mentioned Talladega, so he could go, potentially could have went even deeper. But right now I think this is really great playoff experience for Bubba, racing for something rather than just riding around trying to finish the season strong. I think this is going to give him a massive rise in confidence right now, because as you mentioned, he's a driver who really wears his heart on his sleeve, and sometimes you really wonder if he's really confident in himself and his abilities. And as you saw when he got out of the car, he did this, silencing all of the haters out there who said that he can't drive and all of that, or he's not good enough driver to be in that seat. And to win this race at Kansas at one of the toughest tracks on the schedule, and a race that went full distance, flag to flag, and to hold off Denny Hamlin, Christopher Bell, it absolutely validates Bubba Wallace's spot in the NASCAR Cup Series and on the team co-owned by Denny Hamlin and Michael Jordan. And got a comment there from Humberdeep saying, you think Alex Albon deserves a one shining moment for maintaining composure and you say you meant Pelot there. Got you, Humberdeep. Thank you for clarifying that. and no playoff driver has won a race this year after 2 playoff races. We're now at 18 different winners, one away from tying the 2001 season. That's a story we just talked about on Grid Tonight last week, so be sure to check out that episode when we're talking about the possibility of reaching 19 different winners, or even going a step further than 2021 and reaching the unprecedented level of 20. And based on how things are going right now, we definitely might get 19 different winners, but 20 is looking at it could be a bigger possibility right now. And several issues with playoff drivers today: Kevin Harvick, Tyler Reddick, Kyle Busch. However, Christopher Bell, Alex Bowman, William Byron, Ross Chastain all finished in the top 10. Christopher Bell is the only driver locked into the round of 12 on points, according to NBC Sports. Are you surprised by drivers like Bell, Bowman, and Byron rising up in Kansas while some of the favorites are having bad luck or just downright struggling for speed?
Yeah, I'm very surprised. I'm surprised. Christopher Bell, for example, I think, it hasn't really been a terrible season for him. Obviously, he made the playoffs and everything, but, to see him, be the only one that's locked in. If you had told me one driver was going to be locked in after the first 2 races, Christopher Bell would not have been the driver that I would have chosen to be in that situation. So it's been great to see him step up. And of course, Bowman and Byron, we talked about how all of Team Hendrick were firing on all cylinders at the start of the year, all picking up wins relatively early in the season, and then Bowman and Byron kind of fell back. It's been the Larson and Elliott show over at HMS for the second half, or second third of the season, I guess I should say. But to see them stepping up a little bit as well. Bowman had a great run today, in particular, going. It's great to see some parity in the sport, and it's great to see how many different winners we've had. I'll talk more about that, I think, when we get into the grid ranking section here. I think Joe's got a question for me where I can incorporate that in there as well. But you're getting your entertainment with however many different drivers are in the hunt for this championship at the very least. And again, I don't want to harp on the format too much, but at the very least, it is giving a lot of drivers an opportunity to shine. And some are taking advantage of it. Others that we would expect to see up there, they've got some work to do as we move into to the upcoming rounds of the playoffs here.
Yeah, several drivers have to work to do to get up there. And I'll be honest, Bristol, I think, is going to be very chaotic. It's weird to say that Christopher Bell is safe. Bowman, Byron, they have a good race at Bristol. Even if they're just contending for some stage points, they don't necessarily have to get the stage wins, but just the stage points, they're in pretty good shape. When you look at the bottom, Harvick there, and then even Kyle Busch, he was just -1. First car out. If he has a rough race at Bristol, which he won there because A, Tyler Reddick got spun out by Chase Briscoe, and B, it was a dirt race, so that doesn't really carry over. He needs something to happen because today he did not look that great. Kevin Harvick, we know last year he almost won that race, but then him and Chase Elliott had that issue at Bristol. I don't know what to anticipate next race weekend with from Harvick. He's either going to show up, be hard to beat, or sometimes he just shows up middle of the pack, top 10s. That's not going to cut it. He's really in a must-win situation. It's been a big surprise seeing Bowman, Byron up front. Bell, he was my pick a winner. I feel like that team is really starting to come strong. He just has a decent day at Bristol. He's going to put himself in the next round easily, and I think he's going to have himself some momentum in that second round, considering he's coming to Bristol not worried about the points.
And it's crazy because before the playoffs started, we were talking about Bowman and Byron, how they haven't, especially Bowman not performing up to standards, and Byron having his form drop off after winning earlier on in the season. We expected those two drivers to potentially either be missing the round of 12 or just making it in. But now out of nowhere in Kansas, these two drivers, they had a really solid day. And it just shows the unpredictability of everything that's going on right now. And one of the drivers who didn't have a good day was Kyle Busch, with an expected announcement on Tuesday about his NASCAR future. The first part of the race wasn't too great for the 18. Then later on, he ended up spinning, lost it out of turn 4. Once the cat is officially out of the bag, do you think the 18 team will improve and end the year on a strong note?
I don't think so. I feel this race weekend, Kyle Busch, we always know he is not exactly the biggest fan of the media when they're asking him questions about next year. I mean, in the pre-race show, Kyle Busch was being Kyle Busch. This is all going to lead up to potentially the official announcement on Tuesday, which many have been reporting will occur. Once that's officially out, I just don't see him being one of those drivers that's going to use this, motivate the team, and get going to the next round of playoffs. I anticipate he might be done by this round of playoffs. He hasn't had that strong of a season. As I mentioned, that one win was only because Chase Briscoe took out Tyler Reddick. I just don't see it happening with him and that team. I think they're just going to, as soon as they're out of the playoffs, they're not going to be contending for wins. All the resources, all the attention will go to the remaining Joe Gibbs Racing drivers in the playoffs will be Denny Hamlin, Christopher Bell, and I think Kyle Busch is just going to end the season really mid-pack. I just don't see that team rallying from this.
There might be a slight uptick. I know, Alexander Rossi got a win in IndyCar after the whole McLaren deal that had been rumored for so long was finally announced. So, sometimes I think it does kind of take that weight off your shoulders a little bit. I don't think it's going to be enough, though, to see Kyle Busch take a Cup Series Championship as a great send-off to Joe Gibbs Racing, because it sounds like he's going to RCR. We'll know for sure on Tuesday morning, I guess. But I think, you might see a little bit of improvement. You might see him a little bit more upbeat once this weight is off his shoulders. But in terms of it being enough to win a championship, I think that's probably still going to be a long shot based on how that 18 team has run this season.
Yeah, for sure. And Kyle Busch actually just made an announcement that he's going to be having a press conference on Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern time. And the move is expected to be Kyle Busch leaving Joe Gibbs Racing after a 15-year run and moved over to Richard Childress Racing in 2023. And once that's made official, that'll be our top story on Grid tonight. Be sure to check it out with Adam Limmeries and myself at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time, Wednesday night. And Kevin Harvick got caught up in early trouble when Ross Chastain watched Bubba Wallace up the track into the 4 and put him in the wall. Wallace overcame the contact with Chastain to win. Harvick's at the bottom of the playoff grid and enters Bristol in a must-win situation. 35 points back. Kyle Busch, Austin Dillon, and Chase Briscoe also face elimination. We remember last year what happened there between Harvick and Chase Elliott. Tempers flared between those two drivers. Is Harvick going to be a threat next weekend at Bristol? And should Chastain be worried about payback? It seems like it might be the right time to get it.
Harvick should be a threat. He ran strong last year and then obviously had the run-in with Chase Elliott, and there were some fireworks on pit road. So I'm expecting possibly a repeat of that this year unless Harvick goes on to win. And then he'll actually be happy Harvick for once and be on to the next round and everything will be fine. But I think some other drivers might not be too happy, and Ross Chastain might certainly be one of them. Of course, Bristol is a short track. It's a place where you can beat and bang, and it's a good opportunity for payback, like you were saying, Kobe. And there are a lot of drivers that have been quote-unquote Chastain this year that are certainly looking for an opportunity, I think, to throw out some revenge. I think Bristol's a good opportunity for that. You might just see that this weekend. I think Ross Chastain's going to have a bit of a target on his back.
I agree. Ross Chastain has a huge target on his back. This is the best place for anyone to get back at him because it is Bristol. You can spin them around and you're not doing something crazy dangerous as in a super speedway or a 1.5 mile oval. Ross Chastain, if I was him, qualify up front, try to get those stage points, especially you can win both stages because at the end, I don't care who you are, whether it's Ross Chastain, Bubba Wallace, Denny Hamlin. If Kevin Harvick's in second place, if he's in second place and he's right behind you, he's going to use that bumper and get you around and get into the second round of playoffs. It's going to be really interesting to see. I think Harvick will get a good indication of how his night will go. On qualifying, he needs to be up towards the front. He cannot have a mediocre day. He has to be a front runner all night long. And for Chastain, for him, best position to be is up front because if you're up front, everyone's behind you. Hopefully not too close behind you to give you the bumper.
Yeah, Joe, I totally agree with you. I think Ross Chastain certainly has to be a bit concerned. I mean, right now, I believe he has a 26-point advantage above the cut line. So Ross is definitely going to need to try to pick up some stage points. So if something goes wrong, he'll still be able to get into the round of 12. But otherwise, if he has a bad night, not getting the stage points, gets taken out by a growing list of drivers the growing list of drivers who are not happy with him, then it could be a very bad ending for Ross Chastain in this year's NASCAR Cup Series playoffs. And Kevin Harvick, I think he's certainly capable of going out there and winning at Bristol. We saw how strong he was running last year until the contact with Chase Elliott really put a damper on things for him. But it's certainly going to be intense. It's the Bristol night race. This is one race on the schedule that many drivers in NASCAR really want to win. Some people consider it to be one of the crown jewels on the schedule.
Bristol night race is going to be a lot of fun, very exciting. That's going to be next week, and of course we'll preview that race on Grid Live pre-race. One of the big things, of course, Grid ranking week 24. Shane Van Gisbergen extends his lead with 2 wins this weekend over Max Verstappen in second place. Then you had the 2 MotoGP riders of Pecco Bagnaia and Fabio Quartararo. Jamie Chadwick rounds up the top 5. Now, Shane Van Gisbergen can finish no lower than 18.79 points unless there's a schedule change. However, he is so dominant. If he was to finish outside the top 10 for the rest of the season, 18.79, so he'll easily be in the top 10. Shane Van Gisbergen is only the second supercar driver to lead the grid ranking besides Scott McLaughlin. And one of the big things, of course, Scott McLaughlin, he has done great things since he come to IndyCar, had a great season, 3 wins. He came into Laguna Seca with a chance at the championship. Kobe, is supercars underrated by many who follow international motorsports? Because drivers like McLaughlin and Shane Van Gisbergen, they're really showing some talent out there.
Oh yeah, Joe. I absolutely think supercars is really underrated in terms of driving talent, and it's so spectacular because open wheel racing and touring cars, that which these supercars are, is way different than what McLaughlin is doing right now. And McLaughlin, before he came to IndyCar, he only had like very minimum experience in a Formula style car when he was in Australia coming up through the ranks to try to get into the Repco Supercars Championship. So he didn't have much experience in this style of car, and for him, to have less than 5 years experience in open wheel racing to do what he's doing right now, right up there in the hunt, is so remarkable. That what McLaughlin has done in IndyCar, and I think some other supercars driver, you take them in another discipline, that they do extremely well too. And Shane Van Gisbergen, take him for example, he just doesn't race in supercars. We've seen Shane Van Gisbergen and race on the dirt and a sprint car. We've seen him do some rally racing. We've seen him also get behind the wheel of sports cars as well. And that's something that Shane used to do a lot before the pandemic happened. That's something he really like to do in the future. Even made his debut in the 24 Hours of Le Mans earlier this year. So Shane Van Gisbergen, a very versatile driver, and another driver as well who's very versatile, Chaz Mostert as well. Chaz has done some sports car racing too, and also Bertie Kostecki. He actually came to the States and did a little NASCAR racing for a little while before going back home to Australia. And there's been rumors swirling around the NASCAR garage that we could see Bertie Kostecki from Supercars make a few starts next year, possibly in the NASCAR Xfinity Series.
And one name also throw out there, Marcus Ambrose. Earlier this week, Kevin Harvick on one of his tweets said he believed Marcus Ambrose could have had more wins in the Cup Series if he had better equipment. Of course, Marcus Ambrose, a Supercars racer, then came to the Cup Series. Now, taking a look at the full grid ranking, Colin Rivera, as we mentioned, 15th place, he dropped down to 8th. Charles Leclerc has gotten around Perez and is closing in on George Russell. Lewis Hamilton is 24th place, just barely ahead of Carlos Sainz, who is not in the grid ranking at the moment. 5 IndyCar drivers in the top 20. NASCAR has no driver in the top 20 at all. Chase Elliott falling down to 21st. The unpredictable season of parity in NASCAR has really just shown lately as the drivers towards the top has been falling down towards the bottom, especially when you compare it to Supercars, MotoGP, F1, and IndyCar. Ben, are you surprised with how it seems the competition between all the teams has seemed to gotten closer compared to years past, where you'll see 2 or 3 teams pull away and the competition spread out?
Well, I'm surprised at just how much it's spread out with all the parity that we've seen, but I can't say I'm too shocked that it happened in a year where we introduced a whole new generation of race cars. So, I think, just to see 18 different winners is just fantastic. I think that's probably why, we're seeing, no NASCAR driver in the top 20 of our grid ranking here. But, I got to tell you, to bounce off of what Kobe was saying earlier in the show, to think of the possibility of equaling that record from 2001. I know it's going to sound weird for me to say this because I was the guy that said, I don't think we get to 16 winners before the playoffs. I don't see it happening. And of course, it did happen in the owner's side of things. And obviously, Kurt got hurt and we wish him the best. But, to be at 16 and then 17 with Eric Jones last week, 18 now with Bubba Wallace this week, who's to say we can't exceed even 20? We've got two very good drivers in Ryan Blaney, Martin Truex Jr., who are very high in a regular season points tally right now. They could easily win any one of the next races. Brad Keselowski's an excellent super speedway racer. RFK looked very strong in the duels. You can see him or, Chris Buescher taking a win at Talladega. AJ Allmendinger is going to be back at the Charlotte Roval. He finished second at Watkins Glen. He's run very strong on road courses, obviously. I mean, why stop at 20? The amount of parity that we've seen this season is simply incredible. Now, I don't think we're going to get to 22, but I think the possibility is there when you look at who has still yet to win. We've had 18 different winners this season, and there are still Cup champions and really strong drivers in this series that are not among those 18. It's been absolutely fantastic. And like I said, not too surprised that we've seen a higher number than usual, but my goodness, it's been absolutely fantastic seeing this many in this short amount of time, still with this much racing left to go.
Been a very exciting season of Cup Series racing, and I'll be amazed if we hit 20. As you mentioned, Blaney, he's good at Talladega as well. Truex has another opportunity as well. It's just incredible. And of course, we're going to be following it all season long right here on the Grid Network on YouTube.
Right, we are, Joe, and we'll bring Kobe back in here, and I think it's time to wrap the show up. It's been a marathon show here as we exceed an hour and a half. Lots of great stuff to talk about today, but Kobe, I'll go to you first. What is your one shining moment from this motorsports weekend?
Oh yeah, and this show has been one IMSA Long Beach Grand Prix long since it's a 90-minute race. And my great one shining moment is it's hard not to look any further than Bubba Wallace. His win last year at Talladega, is obviously historic for a lot of reasons. But I feel like this victory at Kansas is his signature win because a lot of people have criticized Bubba, as I was saying earlier in the show, if he's capable of performing in that car since the 2311 race equipment since they started. They've improved that a lot, and it's looking like a car that can compete for wins now week in and week out. And since Bubba Wallace didn't win during the regular season, he's heard even more critics, and Bubba hears it, he knows it, and he went out there, he proved all the haters wrong, and he can say, see look what I did. I won a 400-mile race from start to finish. There wasn't a rain delay. I ran the full distance. I held off the best in NASCAR, and I earned that win. And he passed Tech, so the win is official. Bubba Wallace won the race on air, and I feel like that this is going to be a huge shot in the arm for him. And don't be surprised if he's contending for more wins later on in the season, especially at Talladega, as he'll try to look and repeat. So today is definitely a special day for Bubba Wallace, and heading into 2023, maybe he can win multiple races and get into the playoffs as a driver instead of just running for the owner's championship.
And before I get to my shining moment, comment in the chat room, what a great show. Great show regards. You all have a great night. Thank you for always tuning in and participating. Be sure to like and then definitely share with your friends as well. Let them know, hey, if you love motorsports, we're the place to go. For my shining moment, I'm going to give it to Alex Palou. Everything he's gone through he signed up with Chip Ganassi, then tweeting, that wasn't me. Then he's with McLaren, then the legal lawsuit. Everything going on. We all anticipate he'll be out of championship. It'll be too much distraction. Yeah, he was eliminated from the championship in the second to last round at Portland. But to go out there, put on the dominant performance he did, get that win, and now rumors that he may stay in that same car, maybe not go to McLaren. It's really, I think, just shows the tremendous amount of skill he has as a race car driver, the ability to just focus on the racetrack, get the win. Alex Palou, my grid, one shining moment.
Nick DeFries successfully managed to show that the super license point system is broken, regardless of what you think of Colton Herta. Nick DeVries, of course, is Formula 2 champion. He's had success in Formula E as well. And he proved today that he should have been in Formula 1 a long time ago. To get such a late call-up to replace Alex Albon, to finish in the points for a Williams team that has struggled mightily over the last few seasons, it's proof that F2 champions should be on the grid, ideally, after they win, especially considering they're not allowed to defend their titles. And yet Oscar Piastri has had to wait a season. There's no guarantee Felipe Drugovich, who is now the champion-elect, will be on the F1 grid next year. So I want to give a shout-out to Nick DeVries, not just for his great run today, but for proving everybody that's been arguing in favor of Colton Herta right, that the super license system does not work. And even though F2 gets lauded and praised as the greatest stepping stone to Formula 1, there is still a lot of work to do. There are drivers that win championships there that deserve to be on the Formula 1 grid that still do not have open seats. They might have open seats if the FIA were to let Andretti or, another team like that wants to come into the sport in without as much trouble as they're giving them those. So that's something else to consider as well. But in all seriousness, a great run by Nick DeVries today to finish in the points on his F1 debut. I think it's something like the 67th driver to do that, if I remember Sky Broadcast saying that correctly. So great job. Well done by him. He is my one shining moment today.
And as you look at the clock, you see it passing 1 hour, 37 minutes, and we're out of time for tonight. So please be sure to like and subscribe to Grid Network. Here on YouTube, you can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. We definitely encourage you to take 5 minutes after our show and consider joining our Patreon Invest in Grid Network to keep us on the air well into the future. Click the link to buy me a coffee in the video description. You can buy a drink for your favorite Iron talent here at Grid Network. Big thank you to Edward Hunter, formerly on Amber Zachary, buying us a coffee. We really appreciate it. Any amount will help us continue growing our motorsports media outlet. Visit public.com, also known as the stock market social media home. The link and referral code GRIDnet gives you $5 to invest. Public.com allows you to connect with your friends. You can make new friends and use tools to learn how to properly invest in the stock market. And tune in to Grid Live Encore tomorrow night with Ben, Brandon Crossland, and any others they have on there to discuss the crowning of champions in Formula 3, Formula 2, and Indy Lights, plus ARCA, NASCAR trucks, and NASCAR Xfinity at Kansas. Then Wednesday, Grid tonight with myself and Adam. We're expected to get that big announcement regarding Kyle Busch's future to move from JGR to RCR. So look for that as our top story, and we'll see if we'll have some guests joining us to talk about what's expected to be a major news Tuesday in NASCAR. For Joe Samniego, Joshua Birch, Ben Snyder, Adam Lemers, I'm Kobe Lambert from the Podium Finish. Thank you all for watching and have a wonderful week.
Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities such as new companies and potential business partners, and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GRIDNET for your free $5 to invest. Start investing and networking on public.com.